2 true scary neighbor stories. Number 1. I live in a quiet suburban neighborhood, the kind where everyone knows everyone, except for one house. It's 3 doors down, small, and always seemed a little neglected. The lawn was overgrown, the blinds were always shut, and I'd never seen anyone come in or out. The rumor around the neighborhood was that it had been abandoned for years. But every now and then, at night, I'd see a faint glow coming from the backyard shed. At first, I thought it was just my imagination, or maybe kids sneaking in for a dare. But one night, around 11 p.m., I stepped outside to take out the trash and saw it again. A flickering light through the cracks of the shed's rotting wood. This time, I decided to take a closer look. The air was cold, and the street was eerily quiet as I made my way toward the house. I stayed on the sidewalk, trying to see if anyone was around, but the place looked as dead as ever. Then, as I got closer, I heard something faint, like a low hum or whisper coming from the shed. My heart started to race, but curiosity got the better of me. I stepped into the overgrown backyard, my flashlight cutting through the dark. When I reached the shed, the sound stopped. The air felt heavier, like something was watching me. I peered through one of the cracks, my flashlight beam revealing what was inside. My stomach turned. The shed was filled with old furniture, rusted tools, and in the middle of it all, a mattress covered in dirty blankets. Empty food cans were stacked in the corner, and scribbled notes were scattered across the floor. Someone was living there. I froze, feeling my breath catch in my throat as the flashlight beam landed on a man, crouched in the corner, staring back at me. His face was pale and hollow, eyes wide and wild, as if he hadn't seen another person in years. Before I could move, he lunged at the door, slamming it open. I stumbled back, dropping my flashlight as he sprinted past me, disappearing into the night. The police arrived soon after I called, combing through the shed and the house. What they found made my blood run cold. The man had been living there for months, scavenging food from trash bins and writing notes about the neighbors. On the back of every page were detailed sketches of my house and a list of names, including mine. Number 2. My neighbor across the hall, Mrs. Wilkins, was one of the friendliest people I'd ever met. She was in her 60s, always smiling, always waving. She'd been living in the building for years, and everyone seemed to know her. But over the past few weeks, something about her had changed. It started with small things. She stopped saying hello when we passed each other, her usual cheerful demeanor replaced by a blank, unsettling stare. Then I started hearing her late at night, talking to someone in her apartment. It wouldn't have been strange, except she lived alone. One evening as I was coming home, I found her standing in the hallway staring at my door. Her lips curled into a smile when she saw me, but it wasn't the kind of smile that made you feel welcome. It felt wrong, like she was trying too hard. "You're home late," she said, her voice low and monotone. I nodded, unlocking my door as quickly as I could. That night, I locked every bolt and chain, uneasy about how she had been standing there watching me. A few nights later, I woke up to the sound of knocking. It wasn't coming from my door. It was coming from inside my apartment. My chest tightened as I sat up, listening. The knocking grew louder, more frantic. Then I heard her voice. "Why won't you answer, Alex?" she said, her voice muffled but distinct. I froze, my body trembling. Slowly, I turned my head toward the sound. My heart nearly stopped when I saw her standing at the foot of my bed, her face illuminated by the faint glow of the streetlights outside. Her smile was too wide, her eyes unblinking, fixed directly on me. She didn't say anything, just stood there, her head tilted slightly, like she was studying me. "Mrs. Wilkins, what are you doing here?" I stammered, my voice barely a whisper. Her smile widened, impossibly so, as she took a slow step toward me. I scrambled back against the headboard, fumbling for my phone, but my hands were shaking too much to grip it. She leaned in closer, her cold breath brushing against my face. "Why won't you answer?" she whispered, her voice dripping with something dark and unnatural. Panicking, I lunged off the bed, bolting toward the door. I didn't dare look back as I yanked it open and ran into the hallway. My bare feet slapped against the cold floor as I pounded on my neighbor's door, screaming for help. When the police arrived, I was sitting outside the building, shivering and trying to explain what had happened. They searched my apartment but found no sign of Mrs. Wilkins. The officers chalked it up to stress or a bad dream, but I knew what I saw. The next morning, the landlord came to check on her apartment. What they found chilled me to the core. Mrs. Wilkins was sitting on her couch, her face frozen in that same eerie smile, but she'd been dead for weeks. To this day, I don't know how she ended up in my apartment, or if I'll ever feel safe sleeping again. All I know is that smile still haunts my dreams.